Conflict is something that a lot of leaders and managers feel a little bit uncomfortable with, especially if it is conflict within your team or your team members. It can be hard to know what to do, what to say, and how to behave. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you some important tips on how to manage conflict in your team. Hi, I'm Anne Koopman and I'm a former leader in the manufacturing industry, and now I work as a leadership coach and a trainer and expert for team development. Make sure that you subscribe now because I regularly update my channel with videos around self-improvement, leadership skills, and also how to manage effective teams. Fear of conflict is one of the 5 dysfunctions of the team defined by Patrick Lencioni. And he says this is one of the underlying causes for teams to not be effective. Teams do need conflict to be successful and to grow. So here are 5 tips that you should consider to support yourself in managing conflict within your team. Tip number 1, not all conflict is bad. When we think about conflict, most of us will get a bit of a negative feeling about it. We don't like confrontation, we find it uncomfortable, and it can create this fear of having confrontations in teams or with another human being. But conflict itself is not necessarily negative. It's how we deal with it, how we manage it, and how we interact with one another as we are in conflict situations. Conflicts in life are very important for us to come to agreements, negotiate, understand everybody's needs, and also think innovatively. There is, of course, productive conflict that will help us to grow and achieve all these great results. And then there is disruptive, destructive conflict that can destroy relationships and have a big impact on your team and the team performance. But it's important for you to start to embrace conflict and see it as something positive. Even if we might feel uncomfortable emotions in the lead up to confrontation or while we're in conflict situation, that does not yet mean that this conflict is bad. Conflict is important for you and your team. So let's further look into how you can manage it well. To understand and manage conflict and also understand the root cause, we have to understand the causes for conflict. So within tip number 2, I want to explain to you common causes for conflicts in teams. Conflict can happen because we have different personalities, like these personality clashes, where we just can't quite figure out why and how another person thinks and why they act in the way that they act. It might feel quite hard to figure that out. We might judge certain things they say or do, and that can lead to conflict. Conflict in teams can also happen because there's a bit of a different interpretation in the goals. So if there are certain expectations that are not aligned, if there's a misalignment in priorities, or if there's an issue with regards to the availability of shared goals and the transparency around it. Another point could be scarce resources. So if there's a lack of team members or if there's a lack of other resources in a project, this can lead to difficult conversations and to more pressure. And if we're feeling more pressured, we might become more emotional, which then leads us to not act as rationally and say or do certain things that do contribute to conflict. Another conflict could be the lack of performance. So if there's team members with a different level, different drive, different motivation for performance, this can lead to conflict because we might feel a little bit frustrated that they are not pulling their weight or that we are always doing more than they do, but we sit on the same level, we sit on the same salary, for example. It might feel unfair and that might lead to conflict. Another reason of conflict could be that there are misunderstandings based on our different styles and strengths. So based on our strength and our personality, we might have different preferences in the way we communicate, in the way we look and work with data, in the way that we present results, and also in the way that we schedule our day. And so if there's no communication in a team around what these different preferences are, it can lead to misunderstandings, misinterpretation, and that can lead to conflict. And another point that is really tricky to handle is if there is a difference in values. So values are our underlying beliefs. It's what drives us. It's kind of our compass in life. And so if we have different values to another person, and if there are conflicting values, then this can lead to conflict and can be really hard to move away from because we sometimes can't understand why a person would potentially or possibly think that this is the way to treat another human being or a way to act in certain situations. So these were some examples for reasons for conflict, and it's important to keep these in mind because they will determine how you act and how you solve or manage this conflict down the track. Tip number 3 is around your role in managing the conflict. And your role as a leader is to, in fact, manage and acknowledge the conflict and think about ways to managing it proactively and steer it in a positive direction. Your role is helping these individuals coming to some kind of solution or like mutually respected, understood, shared solution resolution to their conflict. And of course, you have to ensure that whatever solution they come up with does not have any other impacts on other people in your team or the performance of your team or the organization. So in general, you want to be a mediator, you want to be fair, you want to stay neutral, and you want to help them figure out a compromise. But of course, within the boundaries of managing your team and the organization and making sure that there's no other negative impacts based on that solution. And when it comes to being objective and neutral, it's really important that even if you tend to more agree with one party over the other, that you remind yourself that this is now not your role. You are there to try and figure out how they can come closer together and understand each other's perspective. Even if you agree more with one person, make sure that you treat everyone fairly, give everyone a chance to voice their opinions and share their thoughts around an issue, and that everybody also gets to play a part in suggesting solutions. Sometimes our own bias or judgment can kind of steer us in a different way or make us treat someone differently. And so here it's really important that you regularly reflect on trying to stay as neutral and impartial as you can. Tip number 4 is to understand the underlying cause and root cause of the conflict. So you want to spend some time talking to each party and even maybe talking to other people that have observed situations to fully understand what the issue might be, where they are coming from. You don't yet want to go into solution mode, but you do want to start to get a bit of an understanding who is involved, what has happened, so that you can also then have the right conversations with the right people. So this is really important to start to get a first feeling for what's been going on. And again, try to stay neutral and fair and try to observe these things that have come up in a way that is impartial. And so once you've made your first observations, tip number 5 is around bringing the different parties together. And here it depends on your first observations and what you've found out or the conversations you might have had. It might be valuable to get each person into the room with you separately first and have a bit of a discussion and start to hear them out properly so that you can help them maybe also manage their emotions a little bit, calm down already, and create this openness and willingness to work on this issue together. If you think that the level of emotions is okay to manage, you can bring them in together in a room right away. And during these conversations, now it's really important that you step into this role of a mediator and they try to stay as neutral as possible. You want them to come up with their own solution and ideas, because that way you will have much better success rates in getting them to accept the solution and moving forward in a positive way. If you get involved and if you place your opinions and your ideas and your solutions in front of them, it's much harder for them to accept it because they don't feel like they were part of it and they don't really feel like it's addressing what they need in this situation. When you bring them into a room together, make sure that you set some ground rules of staying respectful, of letting everyone finish, of giving everybody the same amount of time to talk and share what's going on for them. Make sure that you state that there's not going to be any blaming or shaming involved, and that, whenever people are going into the path of just blaming someone else and becoming a bit disrespectful, that you can also step in to kind of calm that down and steer them back into a more neutral situation. Like with any difficult conversation, you want to stay and stick on the behaviors and the facts and the figures that you have. Whenever you feel them getting a bit too emotional, you can also try to give them some breaks or reschedule to come back another time. These conversations, and depending what the conflict is, they might take a little bit of time. So you might not be able to finish the conversation within one meeting. You might need several meetings. Once you feel like everyone has been able to share their opinion, their thoughts, their experiences, and everyone has been listened to and heard, then you can start to move on to come to a resolution and negotiate some kind of solution for both parties. You want them to come up with ideas of what can be done and kind of have a bit of a brainstorming session. Of course, if it's a little bit hard for them and they have no ideas, you can of course chip in with your ideas and thoughts, but make sure that they get to choose what they want to do. You don't have to find the perfect solution right away. It can sometimes just be that you want to try something out for a few weeks and then come back together again to readjust. You might want to have a certain plan plan in place with several things, you might just want to decide on one thing that you can do going forward to make this situation easier. You want to make sure that everybody's interests are taken care of and that they find a solution that is okay for both of them. Of course, you might not always find a solution that they're all happy with and they're going to walk around like being super excited that they've solved this issue and everybody is happy. There has to be a compromise and people will have to give in most cases. But just manage these emotions and make sure that that's okay and that they are okay with trying something out, but also ensuring them that they can come back together and share with you if they still have an issue going forward, so that you keep it open for them to have a conversation again in the future. Get them to agree, figure out when and how you will follow up and catch up on the issue, and then let them try and test it out. Remember, emotions are completely okay. It's okay if a conflict gets a little bit difficult for people to manage. We are all humans. Emotions are part of it. And also emotions are part of letting go, for example. So if we have a conflict because there's something in us that, is hard to accept or something that we have to let go in order to move forward, it's okay to allow time to process that emotion before you then move forward. So make sure you check on their cues, on their emotional levels throughout the conversation. And as I said before, you can break up again or make a little break, get them to breathe in and then talk again. If it gets too heated, there will never be a resolution because they won't be able to stay in their rational part of the brain and have proper conversations. So don't feel like you can't interrupt when things get too heated, but make sure you do it in a way that allows them to also feel their emotions and doesn't disregard how they feel. Let me know what you think in the comments, which tip or what part of this video has helped you the most. Difficult conversation, conflicts are always going to be tricky. There is no magic pill, there's no magic trick to make them go away. The key to making it go away is having conversations, and in most cases, conversations will already solve the issue if people just feel like they are being heard and they're being understood. For more tips on managing difficult conversations or providing feedback, check out these videos, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.